Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a fascinating and honestly, a critical collision between modern technology and basic human rights. You see, governments everywhere are rushing to digitize their services. It's the new normal, right? But what actually happens when that relentless drive for efficiency crashes headfirst into the harsh realities of extreme poverty? Well, let's unpack South Africa's digital welfare state. It's a landmark case study that is serving as a massive warning and a huge learning opportunity for the rest of the world.
It really all boils down to one stark question. What happens when a digital algorithm decides if you can afford to eat? Now, South Africa actually runs one of the most comprehensive social protection systems on the entire continent, administering grants to over 18 million people. But as this massive system shifted toward artificial intelligence and automated database checks to verify who was eligible, the human element was completely removed. And relying strictly on algorithmic reasoning to make those life-or-death financial decisions, well, as we'll see, that carries some massive unintended consequences.
Just look at the sheer scale of the impact here. We saw a dramatic drop from 16 million beneficiaries all the way down to just 5.6 million. Literally millions of previously eligible, highly vulnerable people were suddenly cut off from their only source of income. Now, yes, this allowed the government to cut the grant budget by billions of rands, but how exactly did this massive drop happen so quickly?
Let's look at Section 1, South Africa's digital experiment.
Back in May 2020, the Social Relief of Distress, or SRD grant, was introduced as a vital pandemic lifeline. It targeted roughly 18.3 million destitute people. The value was about 370 rand, which is roughly $23 a month. And to qualify, your income couldn't exceed 624 rand a month. But here is where the massive policy shift happened. New regulations in April 2022 mandated a strictly online application process, driven entirely by automated database checks. It instantly became the first large-scale, fully digital social grant program of its kind in the country. It verified income through automated bank account checks and government records, with absolutely no human oversight.
Which brings us to Section 2, the accountability gap. Researchers have a specific term for the issue this created: accountability displacement. Simply put, it's a structural flaw where you, the citizen, suddenly have to answer to a rigid, opaque computer system that you can't even challenge, while the state kind of hides behind the tech. The burden of proving your eligibility and fighting wrongful rejections shifted entirely onto the shoulders of everyday people. Meanwhile, institutional responsibility just fragmented across multiple government departments and private tech vendors.
And here is the core disconnect we need to talk about. The government essentially designed a system for a user who has a smartphone, reliable internet, administrative literacy, and fluent English. But the reality? The actual applicants are facing extreme poverty, dealing with incredibly spotty internet, navigating 11 official languages, and often juggling unpaid care responsibilities. It's like building a high-tech bridge for cars in a place where people only have bicycles.
Just imagine this scenario for a second. The system used AI-enabled facial recognition to verify your identity, but it only gave you 5 attempts on a web link that expired in 72 hours. So if your phone camera was scratched or your internet dropped, you were completely locked out. On top of that, automated checks were relying on outdated government databases that falsely told the system people were employed. And if the algorithm denied your application, it did so without any clear explanation. To make matters worse, if you wanted to appeal, you had to use the exact same online-only system that just rejected you.
Let's move on to Section 3, the human cost.
Listen to this quote from a grant participant in the Eastern Cape. They said, "We are different in our disabilities. I wish the government would make systems that are user-friendly for persons living with disabilities so that no one is left behind." That really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly illustrates how this system disproportionately hurt people with disabilities who were given absolutely no accessible offline alternatives. By shifting to a digital-only interface, the anti-fraud logic actively excluded the exact vulnerable population the welfare state was built to protect.
And because of this massive accountability gap, civil society organizations basically had to step in and become the safety net. Groups like Black Sash bore the heavy burden of helping citizens navigate this flawed digital bureaucracy. Since there was no government help desk to turn to, informal peer networks and community advice offices became the substitute accountability mechanisms. In fact, around 70% of community advice office work suddenly revolves strictly around helping people fight this algorithm, forcing them to absorb the massive human fallout.
This brings us to Section 4, the landmark legal backlash.
This whole situation turned into a massive constitutional thriller. As we saw, the grant started in 2020, and the digital-only shift happened in April 2022. Well, that's when civil society groups, specifically the Institute for Economic Justice and Pay the Grants, sued the government. Fast forward to January 2025, and the Pretoria High Court made a monumental ruling declaring the digital system unconstitutional. Now the government has appealed that ruling, which sets the stage for an impending Supreme Court of Appeals showdown coming up on August 25, 2026.
Let's look a little closer at that High Court ruling from January 2025. It was a major victory for these civil society groups. The court highlighted that the online-only mandate lacked reasonable justification and unfairly excluded individuals who didn't have smartphones. The judge also invalidated that strict 624 Rand income threshold and heavily criticized the blunt algorithmic database checks that were denying eligible applicants based on faulty data. Crucially, the court ordered the government to provide alternative offline application methods.
But with the government appealing, this upcoming Supreme Court hearing is going to be incredibly significant. Groups like the Global Center on AI Governance will be arguing against the human rights risks of automated decision-making. This case is going to test a fundamental modern question. Can digital efficiencies legally override constitutional safeguards? If the government wins, it could establish a frankly terrifying legal precedent, not just for South Africa, but for digital governments worldwide, basically prioritizing algorithmic automation over the socio-economic rights of millions.
So, how do we fix this? That's Section 5, Designing Fairer AI Systems. The Institute of Development Studies outlines 3 distinct accountability pathways to restore a meaningful voice for citizens. First up is capability strengthening. This means actively supporting and building on the informal networks citizens are already using to navigate these barriers. Second is multi-actor co-design. We absolutely have to design systems with citizens right from the start, instead of just retrofitting them later. And third is advocacy amplification. This involves creating secure ways for citizens to record and report system failures, which makes patterns of algorithmic bias visible and actionable for policymakers.
These specific policy recommendations aim to ensure that as governments modernize, efficiency doesn't just completely bulldoze over inclusion. It really boils down to a few key rules. Digital should be the primary channel for sure, but not the only one. Offline options have to remain available. Also, wherever AI systems determine eligibility, there must be a mechanism for human review. On top of that, the private tech vendors building these systems have to be held accountable through independent audits and transparent error reporting. And finally, we have to actively design these interfaces alongside elderly and disabled communities to guarantee no one is left behind.
The case of South Africa's digital welfare system is a powerful global warning for all of us. It clearly shows that accountability displacement isn't just some minor technical glitch, it's a profound structural failure that happens when digitalization outpaces participatory governance. So the question we want to leave you with today is this: will efficiency continue to outpace human rights, or can we actually build AI that truly serves everyone? If you found this update helpful, please hit the like button and share this video with fellow members. For more deep dives into the latest environmental regulations and industrial news, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. See you in the next one.